So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And today I'm delighted to have with us John Swallow, who's the Managing Director at Test Consulting. So, firstly, John, thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Test Consulting, what you do, how you help people, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here. So Test Consulting is a business that we set up in 2016. I'd been working for a large construction business and I'd opened a sort of energy division for those guys. But before all of that, realistically, I'm a qualified electrical engineer. And I spent a lot of time in industry,
Yeah.
going around doing all of the smart intervention stuff, metering, monitoring, software, all that kind of thing. So I have a background in sort of engineering. And I left my job with GMI Energy in 2016 to set up Test because realistically I developed more of a consultative approach.
Yep.
So this was more along the lines of first early stages of compliance within energy and carbon had started to come in. And the first iteration of that was something called ESOS. So that's Energy Saving Opportunity Scheme. And we potentially saw a step change in what was actually physically happening within the energy environment and what was important for customers. So ESOS became sort of like the first bit of compliance that they might have had to do, say, for instance, after CRC. So 4-year obligation, and effectively every business that employs any more than 250 people were involved in that process.
Right.
Long story short, I kind of enjoyed that kind of area, the audit, the surveys, the reports, all that kind of thing. So in an effort to try and grow the business at GMI Energy, I effectively came up with a consultative approach. And the idea was that realistically, we would lead with that consultancy approach, provide some sort of intimate kind of client relationship stuff, but also from an agnostic point of view.
Yep.
So we weren't trying to sell them anything per se, other than the opportunity to remain compliant. But of
Yes.
course, the idea was underneath it all to start to potentially provide all these services underneath it where we might fit all of these wonderful energy technology solutions that do all the reduction stuff. So I effectively left in 2016, set up Test Consulting, and there's quite a few interesting stories around how that actually physically happened. I ended up with a secondment with a client that I was already working with at GMI. I got all my restrictive covenants that kind of worked off because they'd realised that the consultancy stuff that we'd kind of developed within the business, no one else kind of understood or could deliver it.
Right.
So in order to make sure that they were embarrassed, they kind of came back to me and said, "Can you make sure that we've got some sort of continuity plan? But you go away and take all that work away with you when you go." So I initially got involved with a company called Thorn Lighting. Thorn are now our longest serving client. So in
Brilliant.
September, they'll be a 10-year-old customer for us.
Wow.
Um,
Brilliant.
but the first kind of thing that I did was I wrote myself a little bit of a business plan. And because I've made the step change away from being sort of engineering, being more focused on providing impartiality and reporting and such like, I came up with a system called Calendar Bingo. So Calendar Bingo was my first business plan. And realistically, what it was, I had a number of days within a month, which were bookable. So Monday
Yeah.
to Friday, 4 days, 4 weeks of every month. And effectively, what I tried to do was get at least 3 of those weeks booked out, 15 days worth of work.
Brilliant.
And then realistically, the other side of it was that I'd either spend clerical time, business development time, whatever time I fancied, realistically within that fourth week. Long story short, within a very short space of time, and I think it took me about 2 months calendar bingo was 20 days dobbed out on the card.
Right. Well done.
So realistically, that was the first sort of real step towards what we were trying to do. Now, I was an individual on my own. So some people might say lifestyle, some people might say other things in terms of what type of business it was. But it facilitated a need at that particular time. And I did it successfully for 4 years going into COVID. So and I know that's something that we've already kind of had a chat before we started this. But as with everyone else, it was a challenging time. A lot of what I was doing in that first 4 years was mainly based on client side. So I would spend, I don't know, say for instance, 2 weeks of every month, either with a client on a client site, spending time gathering information to effectively provide the right level of reporting for those guys. So when COVID hit, I've literally got to put on the handbrake and I can't go anywhere. So I think that's when I realized that the part of the job that I really liked was being out on site.
Right. Yep.
So I think the key thing then was obviously we learned some new skills. So part of what we've been doing in that build up to COVID, we've got a couple of relationships with standard organisations. So British Standard Institute, BSI.
Yep.
We're part of their associate consultant program, and we carry several standards for them for the energy and the carbon side of it. The first thing I did, I learned to become a remote auditor so we could carry on doing things, and that gave me some methodologies to kind of push it forwards. And also another thing that we used to do was energy Kaizans. So Kaizans are kind of like a deeper dive into specific areas. So if I was working with a continuous improvement team or a sort of management set of people to drive down energy costs and whatever, we might do these Kaizans. So they were specifically out on site, whiteboards, go out, doing the Gembas, bringing all the information back together. So I came up with a package by which we could do that remotely as well. And we did that with the likes of York Teaching Hospital as an instance, which seemed to work quite well. Yep. But I got to the end of COVID and I realised that two things. I was on my own and I was lonely. And secondary, that the elements that we'd worked on originally in the first 4 years had started to change.
Right.
So I think the key thing was that when I first set up the business, we were an energy management consultancy.
Yeah.
Very quickly became another word which everyone kind of anchors around now, which is carbon. So, and anytime we were doing anything on the energy side of things, we'd obviously also know what the carbon intensity was of anything. But
yeah,
the shape shift came with the around about the sort of COVID time. Carbon became more of a planning routine methodology, more compliance, more regulation, more organisations sprang up on that carbon side of it. So we very quickly adjusted to that. But I did realise at that point that I didn't necessarily have all the skill set to be able to do that. So I started to employ people.
Yeah, brilliant.
So again, now, so from me setting up the business in 2016, there is 6 of us here in the office in Leeds.
Brilliant.
And then I have a non-exec director who is remote. And then we've got a remote marketing function, which sits outside the business. So, but everyone's directly employed here. And what we've also managed to do now is that not only do we do energy and carbon, but then we do lots of things within the renewable area as well. Right. So we might also then still do almost like we've got an advisory service as well, which is almost everything else.
Right. Yep.
So which leans on all of the sort of energy, all of the sort of skills that I had from my previous career, which is when I've been running around smart buildings, commissioning things, and all that sort of thing. So,
Blimey, that's a quite that. I mean, well done to start with. That's pretty good. I don't know if you're aware about the business survival stats, which aren't great to be perfectly frank. Which is 80% of businesses fail within the first 5 years of operation, and of the 20% that survive, 80% of those fail in the second five. So to get to 10 years, you are in the top 4% of businesses, which I think is always worth celebrating because it is tough running a growing business. And I think it's always worth celebrating people that have done what you've done and achieved for that period of time. And looking back, John, what would you say some of the biggest issues and challenges you've had to overcome?
probably educating the sector. I think there's
Right.
there's a push and a pull. So the crux of the matter is that realistically, whenever you're measuring energy and carbon, that you obviously need to get a result. When you're working within compliance, those results are then examined by somebody else. But then obviously it depends on what type of sort of calculations that you're doing. But I think the key around sort of like the first iteration or the first round phase of ESOS. So everyone thought that was just a pain in the backside
Right.
because they had to do it. And so the government's reaction was to see if they could potentially evaluate to a customer, to a large user of energy, what opportunities there were actually there to
Yeah.
reduce their energy spend. So the thought process was, let's get everyone to do an audit that's in the large business sector in order to see how much money we could save. So all of our reports were going into a sort of like a pool of numbers somewhere, so that the government could turn around and say, worst case scenario, best case scenario, if everybody did what they were supposed to do, we could save 20 trillion pounds or whatever it is on
Yeah.
energy across the sector. But everybody on the ground, no one knows about it ever before. No one knows about how it's going to be put together. And obviously, us as engineers, us as consultants, us as lead auditors, assessors, also are in the same position because realistically, this is brand new. So I go away. I'm part of the Chartered Institute of Building Service Engineers.
Right.
So I did my training through those guys because obviously I've already got quite a few qualifications with them already.
Yes.
So my skill set just gets sort of like it's just an added on bolt onto to what we actually physically do already. So, but then the audit skills then become quite a difficult thing.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing: not all audits are equal.
Right.
So if you're working if you've got a company that's working in petrochem, it's going to be a very technical site. So it's not as easy to spot the energy opportunities. If, say, for
Right.
instance, all you've ever done is counted lights in a
Yeah.
stadium. So the level of detail that was required
Yeah.
was dependent on the skill of the individuals. So luckily for me, because I'm getting on a little bit now and I've seen quite a lot of things, flattened quite a lot of grass, shall we say. My skill set, I've worked in all sorts of different environments. So I have been in manufacturing, I've worked for manufacturers. I know the processes, obviously, I've talked about Kaizans and working with
Yeah.
continuous improvement teams. It's almost like those skills were already there for me, and it was fairly easy for us to kind of go out and do these audits and surveys at a technical level, but then add some value. The only problem was with phase one is because it was a compliance round and all that people were interested in was ensuring that they didn't get fined. As
Yes.
soon as the report came in, it went in the bottom drawer and it's closed. So, and then what we got was, so like I've already suggested, it's a 4-year cycle. So phase two comes along, and there was minor gripes the uttering of "oh no, not again."
Yeah.
But at least what we kind of saw then, that there were some fairly interested people. So again, it's the educational stuff and it's these boundaries that we have to kind of batter. So I think in answer to your question, and I know I've gone down a long route of sort of answering it,
All good.
it's about potentially being able to demonstrate the value of what you're actually physically outputting.
Yeah.
So it's not my fault that a business has to be compliant, has to have some legislative stuff in place. However, it is my job to make sure that I've given them as much scope, as much aptitude, as much visualization of
Yeah.
what is capable from if they decided to go down the route of starting to tick some of these things off the list.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense. And whether it's from the challenges you faced or the successes, what would you say are the biggest learnings you've had about growing a business, John?
Um, yeah, so this goes back to probably who you actually physically get engaged in the process. So I suppose um, my biggest learnings have been along the lines of I'm very comfortable with engineers um, because I am one.
Yep.
So and like attracts like and so on and so forth. So I think the key was that it was always easy to sell to engineers bits of technology, audits and surveys, and nice things like that.
Yep.
But unfortunately, when you've got buyers and then operational people above them, they're only interested in the potential of either staying compliant or using their finances to buy the right things that do the reduction for longer periods of time.
Yep.
So the skill has been around being able to sort of navigate both the content by which we put it together and then who we actually physically talk to get it sorted out. But when we're doing ISO standards, it's all about key stakeholder engagement.
Right.
So
Yep.
that stakeholder stuff is the top of the tree, and
Yep.
without it, you can't do an ISO. So I suppose as I've learned to become an auditor for ISO standards, you end up with a different kind of expectation around how you have to effectively influence not only things within the standard, not only people that have to do the work that you can't do because it's their job and
Yep.
it's their industry, it's their factory, it's their building, it's their business. Effectively, I've got to get to the people at the top as well. So
Yes.
sitting in the room with those guys, game changer.
Yeah.
But then also effectively learning how to moderate my language so that they understood what I was talking about.
Yeah. That makes sense, and I'd imagine the different layers of people have different drivers, different things are important to them. So it's being key to be able to present the right message to the right people to get the right outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, buying is everything within business,
Yep.
anyways. I think the key along the lines of when you're a consultant or you're going in to provide what might seem a very stodgy piece of work, not really adding much value to it. You've got to think differently about it, and I think I changed my demeanor towards being sort of interested in numbers, ROI calculations and stuff like that, and became more passionate around the end goal.
Yep.
And so therefore, then when I'm talking to a CEO of a business or a vice president of a factory or something, I present it in a completely different way. But
Right.
then I suppose what we're doing in the first instance anyway, that passion has to ripple right the way through anyways, because in order to get anybody to do something for you, you've got to make sure that they understand A, what it is, and then B, they believe
Yes.
in wanting to do it.
Yeah.
So changing the mindset is another one, and those behavioural changes within people has been quite literally
That's
the key thing that's kind
Yeah.
of made the proposition much more accessible.
Fascinating, fascinating. So that sort of thing is a big part of what we do and I do as a coach. And I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm
Mhm.
keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that is business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah, I think so. I had the vice president of operations at Thorn was
Right.
a guy called Gavin Bryden. Now, Gavin, luckily for me, is a electronics engineer. So his passion was basically ensuring that any of his factories that he kind of ran were as optimized as possible. Um, I met him years ago. In fact, when I was working at GMI, I was in Germany, and I saw him in an airport just by chance, and he
Brilliant.
went, "I need to speak to you about what we're going to try and do with our energy management stuff." And I knew him really well, but I go up to see him. He's a big guy. He's quite impressive. He knows his stuff. Um, but he's also a really good team player as well. So
Right.
he had a senior management team. He never stepped into the fray. He always made sure that it was his idea, but everybody else could own it. And it did no different with me really. So, but the key was with Gavin. He always told me to keep going. So the
Right.
difficulty of a consultant going into a business is that you're not the VP of Ops. You're not part of the senior
Yes.
management team. You're an outsider,
Yeah.
and so therefore then everyone's questioning why. Gavin put a line through the sand with everyone in his senior management team, not with a rod of iron or anything, but from a point of view of saying, "I brought this guy in. We've got a problem. If you don't make this successful, we've all failed."
Yeah.
So
Right.
that was kind of like key. But then that allowed me access to the senior management team. The senior management team were always all right with me,
Yeah.
but it was the people on the ground. But the best part of Gavin was I never really went to him and said, "This person's not giving me what I need. This person's been a bit awkward. This is all not kind of going together." We'd often go out and have a bottle of wine over dinner, and I'd try and make sure that he understood my challenges.
Yeah.
And all he ever did, so I never spoke about those challenges in detail. All I ever did was say, "I've got a problem A, B, C, D."
Yeah.
Um, and he would never give me his answer as to how to resolve it. But what he would do is he'd always put a massive hand on my shoulder and say, "Wherever you need to be, wherever you need to go, I'm right behind you."
Well. Well.
So singularly impressive in the way that he delivered things,
Yeah.
um, led with knowledge, and effectively bound everybody together with his sort of like aura.
Yeah.
All so the key was that, and I was part of that as well. So by the
Brilliant.
time I'd finished at Thorn, by the time I'd finished doing the project that I was working on for Gavin at Thorn, I was just part of the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he
Brilliant.
managed to allow me to evolve within his team, and
Brilliant.
to the point where no one cared whether I got in my own car and went home and stayed in a hotel or
Yeah.
whatever, and I got paid by them, not as an employee. So
Brilliant.
uh, he is impressive. I would also like to suggest that the guy that we've got in now as our non-exec director, who again is an old friend. Um, Andrew Stevens, Roo, as we affectionately call him, basically is a guy that I met in the 90s. So he ran an IT training business,
Right.
which became very successful. And a few years ago, he sold it. But Andrew Roo basically has been another good friend who has always been there for me. And as we began to grow our business here, and as he exited his own business, he'd shown some interest around potentially getting involved, and he joined us as a NED 12 months ago.
Brilliant.
So, but again, another super intelligent person, another leader of people, and another person who effectively guides me without being guided. That's the best way, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think, I always define the difference between consulting and coaching, which is necessarily Ned, but consulting is, which I guess you do, is you're being paid for your knowledge and expertise, and therefore typically consulting is telling people what they need to do
Mm-hmm.
or doing it
Mm-hmm.
for them in
Yeah,
respect to reports, which is incredibly valuable. It's reliant on knowledge. True coaching doesn't necessarily need to have the knowledge because it's at helping people find their way forward.
yeah,
Now, obviously, in what we do, there we sort of it's a bit of a mix of the two because we bring knowledge and systems with us. But yeah, I think it's the idea of. See, I don't think I think people benefit from the idea of just being helped to find that truth, the way forward, and then if it's my truth, I will deliver it because it's what I think, not what somebody else thinks.
yeah.
So yeah, no, so that's a great example. So, and John, obviously you're very experienced in so many different areas. I'm keen to know what you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far.
Yeah, I suppose the learning new skills is always very good, but remembering old ones is probably better. So
Yes.
in the last few years, we've kind of moved into different sectors. Um, Obviously, my decision to move away from classical engineering, as we might class it, and move more into the consultancy stuff was definitely a career choice that I made myself.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was subliminally, there might have been some avoidance in the background around why I'd actually made that decision, whether I felt I was um, more comfortable not working on a site or whatever it was. I don't quite know, but I followed my nose. But it's interesting that in the last few years, and specifically for certain clients and for certain solutions, when we've been putting these reports together, they've almost been able to fathom out that I'm an engineer. I don't go around telling everybody I'm an
Right.
engineer. So, but it's almost like, hang on a minute, there's a lot more in here than what we expected. So
Brilliant.
you've peeled back a few more layers of the onion here.
Brilliant.
Where does that come from? So, and then when I've gone, well, realistically, it's because of this background, they've felt more comfortable with it.
Brilliant.
And one of the things that I always thought as well as a consultant is that I always had to give impartial advice.
Yeah.
That's not actually true. So, and specifically in, say, for instance, when we've been writing a program or developing a systemization where there has been layers of automation or there's been additional things that need to go in, those companies now come back to us and say, you know the software, you know the
Yeah.
equipment, go away and do it, and then bring it all
Brilliant.
back because that's the key. So another thing that we've been able to do in the last few years is we have a small engineering department here now.
Right.
So I've got
Oh
two
wow.
engineers who go out and do field activities.
Yep.
But that's born out of the fact that we've we've written reasonable information.
Yep.
It's pricked enough ears up to be of value to people in front of them, and then they've come back to us and said, "Well,
Brilliant.
you're our trusted advisor. Why don't you deliver the systemization?" So we've got a software engineer now,
Brilliant.
so on and so forth. So
Wonderful. Absolutely brilliant. And within the action coach sort of system that we operate, we have a definition of what we call a true business, and it's just sort of for me it's an aspirational thing, but for us a business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owner.
yeah,
And I'm keen to know what your thoughts are on that and where you might be on that process.
yes, that's a very interesting one because a couple of years we had the business valued, and I looked at all sorts of different dynamics. Um, and the hub and the spoke and all that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and the devaluation of the business based on the fact that I knew everything and no one else did.
Right. Okay.
So, well, I mean, I think that's an overview that we've kind of sorted. But in the
And that's
last
a
couple of
fairly
years,
standard model for a business.
yeah,
It's a very common thing.
yeah. So, I mean, the key is now we've not corrected everything, but effectively, what we did was we had the valuation done. We then had an IP audit done because we written some software ourselves.
Yep.
So we got the audit done as well. We then valued all the bits and pieces within it, and then started to look at all this other stuff where I could actually physically start to divorce myself. I brought in two key people
Right.
who are youngsters. One's my coder who basically writes the programs,
Yeah.
onboards all the systems, and the other one is a more operational. So he organises engineers, site visits, reports. He's the one who's basically got the timings
Yeah.
for everything. So those two are set. They're both young lads, like I say. We're going to do the growth shares very shortly and build that up. And then effectively, the exit strategy is for me not to be here.
Brilliant.
But I think unless we'd done that assessment, we would have carried on
Yeah.
regardless. So I think we've had a look over our shoulder,
Brilliant.
and for me, looking forwards isn't very far anymore,
Great.
which is different.
It so is, isn't it? And you know the more we can connect with that point in the future, if it's what assuming that's where we want to head to, then the more definite that link is, the more it inspires us to achieve what we need to achieve in a
Yeah, yeah.
short, potentially a shorter time scale as possible. So that's brilliant. So looking forward then, John, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Well, we're growing again, so there's obviously that as an issue. We're bringing in new people,
Yep.
whether they fit, whether we fit. That's the whole thing. Obviously, as we grow and start to potentially bring in new customers, it takes us in different directions. So there's a lot of variance to what we do, a lot of
Yep.
variety, which is not a bad thing.
No.
But I think one of the major challenges is that we broke ground into the solar industry, and again, that's where some of our reporting software kind of works really well. So there's the potential for setting up a separate division.
Oh, right.
So keep the consultancy one side, and build some divisional stuff
Brilliant.
within there. So that's the next set of challenges, because I think if you look at us as a business, and I've spoken quite extensively about consultancy services, that's not
Yep.
just what we do. So and again, we're boots on ground, we're solving issues, we're
Yep.
we're
Brilliant.
doing all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, I think it's the order of semblance by which we do that. That's our
Yes.
biggest challenge.
That makes perfect sense. And final question, John, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that?
I wouldn't change a thing.
Brilliant.
No, I think what I would say to my younger self is be more assured of yourself. Don't worry about it.
Brilliant.
You are what you are. You're good at what you do. Keep going in the right direction. But I
Brilliant.
think there's the retrospective, was it my fault type of thing
Yeah.
isn't something that you should be doing. I think experience is massive, but I also think having an engine, understanding what you're capable of doing, and having no limits is the best thing.
Brilliant.
One of the things that we found in the solar industry is, and we're late to the market, is that it's quite a close shop, and people are fearful of us as a company,
Right.
because we think differently.
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant.
and the key for me is that if you bring in people who haven't got a footprint or a mechanism or a way
Yep.
of doing things, they become malleable. But then they've
Yes.
also got their own ideas. They're the
Yep.
best people that you can bring into a business.
Brilliant. Love it.
So any 18-year-olds looking for a job out there that's passionate about what they do and they believe in themselves, they're our ideal candidates.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, anyone watching, please apply. And John, it's been fascinating talking to you today, and I thank you so much for sharing it. And for anyone that's watching, including potentially recruits, would like to get in touch with you or Test Consulting, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, basically they can go on the website. There's an email address on there, or
Brilliant.
they can send us an email straight in to us, and we'll deal with that as it comes through.
Wonderful. Well, John, it'd be great to swing by another 6 to 12 months and just see the next phase, who you've recruited, those sorts of things. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.